To any Christians, if Jesus' genetics were tested, would they be half Mary and then half deity, or would it just be unknown? So this is, as I said, to the Christians, and this can apply to other other religions that have a belief, because it's not unique that there is a belief where, oh, this god became actual human. They have things like back and you have like Hercules, demigods, and things like that. That concept of having the supernatural come into human form is not unique, wasn't created. It's not unique or created by the Christians, despite the fact that the question was to that. But if you are Christian, I think one of the key parts about being Christian, now there's many different denominations and things like that, but one of the general assumptions or thoughts or beliefs is that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and somehow he was brought into earth by the Holy Spirit, working in some ways, working its magic in some ways to impregnate. I don't know if it was impregnate or inseminate. It wasn't inseminate. I don't know if it's inseminate. Like this whole thing with the process. Part of that is do they think it was just kind of magically just did it just occur? And this is part of this question. How did that entire process begin? That conception of Christ. How did that happen? Was it did God in your belief system create a sort of blank sperm? Like, was this the sperm cell that came in and fertilized the egg in Mary? Was that some situation where God created a completely unique sperm? Was it the sperm itself, the sperm cell? Did he create some kind of perfect sperm cell? If let's say it's a perfect sperm cell, it had its 23 chromosomes and everything like that, and it was actually going to actually get into the egg. Mary already had the egg in her. It was Mary's egg, Mary's 23 chromosomes, and then what are the other 23 chromosomes that made Jesus? Because the human sperm cell is haploid, so it's 23 chromosomes and join the 23 chromosomes of the female egg to form with diploid cells. That's just how this works. This might be birds of the bees. Some people might not know this. And from just seeing, I think you'd be surprised to actually know how few people actually understand what's happening in this. And this is relatively new news. This is new information. This is how it's been happening since the beginning of humanity, for all we know, the beginning of life in some kind of way, different things with sperm cells coming in and fertilizing eggs and things like that, especially when you come to mammals and things like this. But when they wrote the Bible, they didn't know this information. So coming up with something like a virgin birth, whether you believe it was a virgin birth or just a mistranslation of young girl and things like that, but whatever, that process of that artificial insemination type of thing, that made more sense because people didn't have this knowledge about what happens. But now that we have this knowledge, and most people who even accept the Jesus myth, I think it's a myth, would believe that he went through some kind of human process of being in the womb for 9 months. So let's talk about that start. What are those other genes? What are those other chromosomes? Did God create a completely unique, supposed perfect human version? Or did he somehow take a chromosome out of Joseph, a sperm cell out of Joseph, and then put it into Mary somehow, and the Holy Spirit to do that, and it was like, okay, here you go, and then somehow the Spirit, instead of that point wherever the conception happens and wherever you think a spirit of a human comes into, because some people think, actually, and it's another question, it's another thing, your Christianity, do you believe that souls exist before, or does that process of humans having intercourse somehow initiate the creation of a soul, like God somehow creates a brand new soul at that time? Or do the two souls of the humans who are having intercourse, create a new soul by themselves, by them having by them having intercourse, and then having the egg be fertilized by the sperm? And then now in that situation, are they somehow half souls in eggs that are not fertilized and half souls in the human sperms that don't actually get in? Now with this Holy Spirit situation, was there a tail? If God knew this single sperm was what's going to fertilize the egg, did he need to create a tail with it? Was it really swimming in there? Did he create a whole bunch of it, an average amount of sperm that's happened in ejaculation, and then it just happened to be whichever one got there? Then that's when the Jesus soul would have been put in to the cell, to the egg. I mean, there's a lot of questions in here. Or was it just already kind of thing where like right now you go in and you have a fertilized egg that's outside, and then you bring it in there, and then you put in the egg somehow, and the Holy Spirit could have somehow teleported it or magicked it into Mary's womb. So there was no actual genetic material from Mary. It's kind of like if you're a surrogate where you can raise a kid, you can carry the child, you can gestate the child, but none of those genetics are actually in the actual child. Could it have been something like that? And now when you have that, there are situations where your body could fight it off as like, oh, this is something alien to. But then if it's some kind of original thing where maybe the first human being was Adam created with the ability to make sperm if at that time God had created human beings to be immortal? Was Eve having periods? Because that reproduction wasn't really a thing because at that time, supposedly, I guess he could have known that they were going to eat from the tree of knowledge anyway. So he created them with the ability to create sperm and have eggs and have that reproductive process, even though they weren't using it for however long they were in Eden until Eve had the situation with the tree of knowledge, and then now they were able to do that? Or did God kind of upgrade their genetics? Was it some kind of pause where it's like some reverse menopause where you have the actual systems when you get into menopause as a female, it doesn't actually work? Or like with kids, maybe you have your balls, your testes as a male, but they don't necessarily work for a certain time. That you get to a certain age where they drop, and then they start creating sperm and things like that. So it's some kind of reversing where it's like that's how it was. They were off, and then after you had the fruit, that kind of unlocked it. But whatever, in that process, you're considering there was no epigenetic changes. There wasn't really too much that could affect with like radiation, all those things. Adam's sperm would technically be as pure a human sperm as possible. So could he have somehow time traveled or kept that copy data of the actual sperm and use that? And those are some questions I have. And to me, these are questions to why I just can't buy the stuff. To me, it just makes sense. This is something people wrote in the past. And for some reasons, multiple reasons, people still believe today. But these are, to me, are just straightforward questions that I ask myself. And I think I would need to have answered before I could believe and trust some of these things. And you guys might be aware of the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, which had a really cool storyline about how there was actually a descendants of spoiler material for Dan Brown. If you haven't read this book, Da Vinci Code, I'm telling you some spoiler stuff. You should watch the movie and read the book. If you haven't done that yet, do it before you actually listen to this. But anyway, so spoiler, they were descendants of Jesus, the descendants of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And I don't know. I don't think that I don't recall exactly how they went into the actual genetics of that. I think it was specifically something to do with Magdalene. I think Mary of Magdalene, who was a prostitute or something. They had something where he had a kid with her or something. And there is also that huge gap, which I might even do a separate video on this. That huge gap of years in his life between, I think it's like a 15-year gap where there's just nothing said about him. Suspect. Could have been out like having some kids and things like that. I don't know if that's what it was with the Dan Brown story, but I'm sure there's some story that has discussed what happened in that time span. But some people say he didn't have any actual biological half brothers or half sisters, whether you want to call them brothers or sisters in that sense, or siblings, direct blood siblings. But it's even if Mary and Joseph didn't actually have other kids, Mary and Joseph might have had relatives. They definitely had parents. Those parents, again, unless you're saying it was just all single kids all the way up, and these are the only kids that came out from this long. There's going to be people, cousins, second cousins, third cousins, nieces, nephews, and things like that, who technically have a certain percentage of Jesus's material in it. And then you tie in things like the one drop rule, or if you have like one drop of black, so people racistly say that, hey, you're black, even if your parents are white and whatnot, then technically, if somebody has like some percentage of Jesus in him, I think 1%, or at least some percent heavenly. So these are just some of the things, some of the questions, some of the things that I think got me out of just being like, this is made up stuff. This is not real. And if you say your belief system is based on reality and facts and things, then wouldn't this be something that you would kind of be able to understand and think of? And again, maximally powerful God could have just all of a sudden just somehow magicked a completely brand new set of things that it's a super kind of God sperm, supernatural Jesus sperm that's only unique to Jesus, only existed, and probably had the keys and the things to have these genetic aspects and epigenetic things that will turn on and have him have these magical powers through the miracles and things like that, and the resurrection, even though the resurrection thing happened, maybe he had like some reset codes, some extra lives in those codes, in those genes. But again, Lazarus and other people have been brought up from death in the Bible. So there's many questions. Just let me know again the question. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ or in other beings, gods, religions, theologies that involve the God becoming human, what were the genetics? If you could actually get some genetic sample, blood of Christ, like, oh man, in the Notre Dame Cathedral, some people say there was a relic in there that was supposedly the actual crown of thorns that Jesus wore, and some people truly believe it. Some people truly believe that 2,000 and something years ago, this crown was actually around the head of Jesus Christ and is still being kept in the Notre Dame and has existed. Just understand that people literally believe that to be as true as the sunlight shining down on you when you walk out to this day tomorrow. They believe that to be in reality in that sense. And they have control of governments, and they have control of cars and vehicles, and they're making decisions that affect your life directly. To me, that is kind of a frightful situation. That, I mean, it's frightful in a way, and then it's also kind of like, wow, our minds are amazing. We can have this compartmentalization because somebody could be completely rational in one sense and capable, and then believe this thing that is realistically just kind of absurd to believe that that thing exists. But anyway, if that was true and you could actually find some blood from that and actually look at that blood, what would be the genetics you would find now that we're doing like mapping the human genome and mapping the actual genetics of people being like, you came from this and this place, you have a predilection to get this and this ailment, or oh, this is the coding that says you're going to be this high, or like, oh, this is the eye color of this person. You can see certain things from just somebody's genetics that you probably would be able to tell from that. I think that's kind of something to think of. Let me know what you think about this. Till next time, like, share, subscribe. Is this blasphemy? What is your thoughts? Goodbye.